Well, I don't know where we left off last year with this car, but I've been driving it a little bit. No overheating problems. We got some nice bugs in our new radiator here. Need to clean that somehow, I don't know. But we have a couple problems, like up there. So this is all coolant. The water pump is leaking since we changed to the pressurized radiator. So it's only 4 PSI. The water pump does leak once it gets warm. And then it leaks here between the head and the block. So I think we're gonna go ahead and figure out the water pump and do a head gasket at the same time. Try and stop that leak. And then another problem is, you can see the alternator is just flopping around. It's not straight, like it's crooked. So I got a new alternator bracket. So we're gonna try and fix that problem at the same time. Just letting it get a little warm here because it's kind of cold out here. I want a little heater while I'm working, but we'll go ahead and pull this head off. All right, water's drained out. Took the hood off real quick. Turned it over to top dead center. So our rotor's pointing forward on the distributor. Belt's off, alternator's off. Took the bracket off because we got a new one. So all that's left now is pull the distributor, take all the head bolts off, and then try and pop the head up off of there. So because of this aftermarket carb, it blocks the distributor lock bolt. So that's a little bit more difficult to get to. And then there's a fuel line that goes right there that's going to be in the way of the head coming up, so we had to disconnect the fuel line. I think I do want to go back to a stock carb at some point because this thing's kind of annoying, but it works for now. All right, everything's off here. Distributor I cannot get out. It's like frozen in there. So I'm going to try to pop the head up with the distributor still in, and we're trying the rope method of putting rope in the cylinders and then hitting the starter to pop the head off. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll try it. Just trying to get as much rope down into cylinder itself. So the front and rear pistons are at the bottom right now, so I'm trying to fill them, and then we'll just hit the starter here. Sharpen the screwdriver so the corner is sharp and it grabs onto the edge of the rope here, and then just push the rope in 6 inches at a time. All right, we've got 100 feet of rope in there. See if it does anything. Way faster than building that head puller tool. This is 100 feet of 3/8 paracord from Lowe's for $9.
Now it's above the head. Battery, is the battery off?
No, it's not. I had to turn it back on to get the starter to run.
How do I turn it off?
Well, this thing's supposed to have a cap on it over here. Just unscrew that butterfly nut on the negative.
Is the carburetor's not in the way? Oh, you might have it there.
I just fucked up the radiator.
Not much. Clean.
Okay, so it's off. This is looking okay inside. No real issues here. It was leaking water out here. When we hit the starter, I saw water come out from between the head and the block right there. Head gasket was leaking about there, so. Then the distributor I couldn't get out, so we left it in there. And it's super hard to turn. I don't know if it's supposed to be wiggly like this. I don't know if I can hit on it right here to try to get the distributor out. I'm just gonna have to think about that one. We're heating it up and you can't really pry on it very much. We couldn't twist it at all. This was actually all full of rust here. So what we think happened was head gasket broke here, and then it was letting water kind of into this distributor area. It basically just all corroded around there, and then probably water getting into the distributor shaft a little bit, which is why it's hard to turn, I think, which I really like this distributor, so I don't want to hurt it. The roll pin there in the distributor shaft is backed out. I just made this pipe here that fits down over it. And we're hitting on it with that. Hopefully it comes out that way. All right, so distributor's out. I pulled out the shaft, so the roll pin kind of messed up. We'll have to get another one. The distributor itself is just really hard to turn. It's working, but I probably shouldn't put it back together like that. So kind of figure out how to take it all apart here. But it looks pretty straightforward. Obviously, we'll have to readjust points and stuff. All right, we got most of it apart here. And then we're just left with the weights and the shaft in here. And at this point, I don't know where to go from here because I can see these come apart. Those are the backs of some screws, but you can't get to there until you get this plate out, but that plate's not going to come out. I think this is pressed on, but I'm not super sure. Figured it out. You just got to take these E-clips off the studs on the weights. Once the weights come out, this whole thing slides off the shaft, and we're left with this rotatey thing and 4 screws under there. What's going on over here? You found a friend, Novi? Hey, buddy. Right on. Okay. And I guess I'll just take those 4 screws out, and then this back plate will drop off, and we'll see what happens from there. We found another roll pin right in here, so we got that one out. And now this, whatever this thing is, needs to come off, and then I think the shaft will slide out. Alright, here's what we find. Pretty dirty, rusty shaft there. Bearings also. I mean, you can tell there was some water in there for a little while. I assume if I just clean this up, maybe throw a little grease on there, we'll be good to go. Probably don't need to do anything major here. Cleaned up and even dry, it spins a lot better. So I'm gonna grease this up, throw some grease in there, and put it back together. There's a little groove down between the bushings where you can pack some grease in here. All right, it's all back together, working. Points are gapped, much better action there. Ready to go. Got the Ford green engine paint here, so we're just gonna do the head and the water outlet. Might as well make it pretty, the parts that I touch at least. I'm about to put the head back on, but there was, when I brake cleaned it to paint it, there was all this copper. I think somebody painted the whole head copper, and then when I brake cleaned it, it all started coming off. Interesting color choice. All right, these are parts I picked up. Water outlet, which I painted. New lower water pipe with the bung in it so that I can actually drain the water, because mine doesn't. I have to like pop the tube off every time I want to drain water. And a head gasket, and this came from Sacramento Vintage Ford, which it's really nice to have parts available somewhat locally. It costs a little bit more than ordering online, but they usually have stuff in stock. And so this is just their version of the modern head gasket. The pistons are 100 over, so I'm just going to put the head gasket on there, make sure that it clears the piston and everything. This has all been wiped up. Probably wipe it again with brake clean. All clean on the bottom side, ready to go on. Is this stuff a waste of time? I have no idea, but I'm doing it out in the wind for some reason.
Backs up.
You need that?
14, huh?
You need that? So these head bolts go to 55 foot-pounds, but we're kind of creeping up on it because apparently it's really easy to crack the water outlet here. So on those, we're recommended to just creep up on 55 foot-pounds and, like, you know, not just do 40 foot-pounds here, 40 foot-pounds there, 55 here, 55 there. Like, that's apparently what breaks them. So we're just kind of doing all the head bolts, slowly creeping up on 55, and then do it again once it's hot. And I didn't end up pulling the water pump yet because I know that it was dripping a couple drips out of here, but I figured out the main leak was actually from the water outlet, which is why I bought a new one. It's just pretty chewed up, and I think that's where it wasn't sealing. It was leaking down here and then blowing all back, and I thought it was the water pump, but it's mostly this. So we're just gonna run the new outlet and see what happens, and if we do need to mess with the water pump, we will. But you can see this one was already broken. I don't remember if I showed that before, but the ear was broken off of this, and somebody had rebrazed it back on already, so 2 reasons to buy a new one. This one I'll just put in the car for a spare.
Sure they did this in the Ford garage.
Oh yeah, they did this at Ford for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I went to work and came back, and it looks like Dad's helped clean this up a bit. He's got our new lower pipe installed with the drain. I'll probably need to flip that around because I think the drain needs to be on the bottom. But that's cool. And then looks like he painted the fan and the water pump. That's nice too. And firewall, fresh paint on there. Looks like he also spent some time cleaning up the whole block. Everything that's a lot cleaner, and the starter's a bit cleaner. And you can see somebody spray painted this, I think it's spray paint with copper colored spray paint, the whole engine. So I think it at one point was copper colored, which I'm pretty sure they were all Ford green, but obviously this thing's been modified. We do have this one spot over here. So the hood support rod cracked and pulled out of the firewall here. So we need to do a little weld repair right there. This will be my first time repairing sheet metal like this. So we'll see what happens, but I think we can take care of that. But let's finish up this first. Here, just greasing up the distributor before it goes in there, just to try to prevent it from seizing up in there again and rusting again. How did this go? No alternator, but we can see if it'll start. Oh, it really free revs because the belt isn't on. I was like wondering why I was revving so fast. Oh, that started really nice. I wasn't 100% sure on where the distributor was, but apparently we got it in the right spot. It was free revving really fast because the belt isn't on. It's crazy how much horsepower the fan and alternator take. I wanted to go drive it tonight, but the headlights don't work because I haven't put them back together yet, and I don't have an alternator on it. We still have to do the new alternator bracket, and there's no water in it, so I think that's it for today. But at least it started, and it started great first time, just like it always does. Okay, so I have this. This is the alternator bracket that I have, just a homemade welded H, that for the tensioner. And the alternator is not lined up properly with the fan, but I found this from Wagner Products in Missouri, and it's a pretty nice kit. So it's got a different tensioner. It's a little bit shorter. And then the main bracket jogged over about 1/4 inch to line the belt up properly. So you'll see these online alternator bracket kits, and some of them are straight like this, and some of them are spaced over 1/4 inch. And I believe this is what you want. The cheaper ones are straight. And this also came with some bolts and some directions. So I put the brackets in here. This one's loose. This one, they want it perfectly straight up and down. There, so now the alternator can go in. So for the old H bracket, someone ground off the front of the alternator here, so I'm adding a washer in so it fits in the bracket nicely. So we had the issue here where the firewall's cracked and the bracket is just pulled out. We stop drilled all the cracks and then ground them out so that we can weld this back in and then grind it flat and hopefully put the bracket back and be back in business like that side. All right, all back on there. You can see my grinder marks there a little bit, but it's gonna work. I had to replace the rivets with bolts. Maybe we get some rivets later. It's not perfect, but neither is the rest of the car. Engine's ready to go. We just need a belt because this is the wrong belt. So with the new mount, it doesn't work. So I need to go get a shorter belt. It's supposed to have the Model A belt, but I can't get one of those today. So I'm just gonna get a shorter one of those and then I'll get a Model A belt later. Let me see if I can, so on the back of here, we made a doubler plate because the metal is pretty thin here. I'll show you that on the inside here. So up under the gas tank, there's a gap between the gas tank and the firewall. There's the doubler plate. Just a little steel plate on the back, and you can see the back of the welds there, but that should be stronger than it was before. Idling nice. And the alternator is definitely slightly forward, so I might have to work on that a little bit. Maybe I just need a pulley that's closer to the alternator. Other than that, starts up super easy, running smooth. We're gonna go for a drive here. Got back, ran great. Might be a little more power even, but just torquing the head bolts here to 55. Get an 1/8 of a turn out of it, huh? We'll just torque those down and then we're gonna go for another ride tomorrow. What? Nice day today, so we're gonna go take the car out. Go meet some other guys, go for a little drive. What year is that car?
31.
And the 31 Cabriolet.
I should just run with you.
Traffic jam in Sutter Creek. Didn't know that happened here.
Nice.
Thank you. Headed down to Middle Bar Bridge. This road's pretty rough. Not dirt, but it's rough. Leave it in second and then pump the brakes on the way down here. Oh God. Middle Bar Bridge. cold? We lost it. Back up out of the canyon there on the other side of Middle Bar Bridge. I've never been on this side of this road. So this road is the south side of Pardee Reservoir. I believe that's the reservoir right there, but being slowed down here by a modern, it's pretty rare for the A. It's kind of funny, when we were down at that trip in Bridgeport, there's a bunch of Model T guys, and one of the Model T guys kept referring to the A's as, quote, moderns, like annoyed that the moderns were with their T group or something like that. So the 1930 Model A is a modern, so I like to use that term ever since I heard it. If they're gonna stop. Nope, we're stopping. Bunch of cars. Are you tired of sitting back there? Yeah. So we're all done. Just got back. Did about 75 miles total. Car did pretty great, no issues. More bugs in the radiator. I think our water pump is slightly leaking, but it's not bad. I forgot to tighten the alternator bracket bolt down there, so I have to deal with that. The alternator belt kicked out forward there, and I was smelling it burning pretty much the whole time, but it had no issues. So I would say definitely a success with that. You can see water here. That's probably the water pump leaking and then getting blown back by the fan. I don't think it's actually the radiator hose leaking there. And it looks like we got a little oil leak under the valve cover down there that I might have to deal with. But overall, running really nice. Super happy. See what we do next. Have to come up with some trip to go on.